Bob's thinking is that you have to pick whatever the line is the day that you're making the selection. So they can be shifted.
That's not my thinking. That's just how gambling. You don't get to go up to the ticket window and be like, give me that fucking number from 4 to 8.
If that's what they have posted it is, if they're like, oh, the line moved, we forgot to update it, then, like, that's their problem.
Yeah, that is true, yeah. You need to update the board, Bob. That's on you.
Here we are, Abe Cast Iron Balls, a podcast about sports because holy shit, do we not want to talk about anything else? My name is Bob, sitting across the way from my good friend and co-host. That's Abe. How you doing tonight, Abe?
Doing well, Bob.
Yeah, here we are. Lori's here too. How you doing tonight, Lori?
It's sports we're doing?
Sports we're doing.
Then I'm fine.
Then Lori's fine on a Thursday, November 7th.
Fine on a Thursday.
2024. Abe, it's time right now to live bet the games. You are currently, I've got you at 9 and 11. That magic number.
9-11, okay.
2 games under 500. The game tonight is Thursday night football between the Bengals and the Ravens. Who you got?
You know, I had the Bengals and Joe Burrow making it very far earlier this year when the season started, and they're not doing too hot. So I'm going to go with the Bengals. I think they're going to pull through tonight.
Oh, there you go. The line, I think, is like nearly a touchdown in this game.
Yeah.
And at the moment, 10 minutes into the game, the Bengals are up 7-0. So looking good for your live bet.
What could go wrong?
No flag. And the Ravens are going to pull off a big victory. Down by 14 at 1 point.
It looked all right on Tuesday night, early also. And then, things got weird.
What time did you go to sleep on Tuesday?
I went to bed at 1:30. When they called,
we're not talking about that.
When they called Pennsylvania, I said, well, that's about all I need to hear. I don't need to stick around for another hour, probably waiting for Trump to show up at his rally and give his speech, and I'm glad that I didn't. I went to bed when they said Pennsylvania had gone the way that it went. Although, really, I probably could have gone to bed at like 11.
I went to bed at like 11.
And been
but
just
we're not
fine.
we're talking about sports, you said.
Yeah, we're going to get to the sports in a minute.
No.
By the way, you know the New York Times, the Needle, apparently there was some sort of strike that was going to possibly impact the Needle, but it did not. That Needle worked perfectly. I went to sleep like at 11 because I was like, oh, this Needle's never wrong.
Because the Needle,
yeah.
I mean, the Needle, I don't know when exactly it jumped to like 85%, 90%, but it was like 10:30 or 11.
Yeah. You don't need
and
to.
it was in the bag. Again, we will, of course, talk about this at length on Tuesday. The only thing that I want to say, and this is just strictly about like media cope type stuff, but careful listeners of the show will remember that I said one of the first things that I'll be looking for on election night is how big of a win he gets in Florida, because Florida is going to count early. They're going to have the results in remarkably efficient time. Like you're going to know, like it's going to jump from like a quarter of the vote to half the vote to 90% of the vote before you fucking know it. And I said, if that is closer than it is expected to be or than it was in 2020, then you can start thinking about a Harris win. If instead it's a big Trump victory, then we need to start worrying about the rest of the situation here, if you are of the sort of preference that I had, certainly, going into the evening on Tuesday night. And then before they even started announcing Florida returns, I started hearing people saying, like, rejecting my way of thinking before we even heard it. Where it's like, hey, don't go putting too much stock into this idea that, you know, Florida is going to presage anything about the rest of the evening, because that's bullshit. And he might well run away in Florida, and that's not going to say anything about the rest of the electorate. And I'm going, I'm sorry, what? Like, what? I know Florida's a weird fucking place, right?
Yeah.
I recognize that. I am of the belief, more than most other Americans, of Florida's weirdness and despicability, largely. But they're also humans. And the thing that unites most Americans is, in fact, that we are all, the voting age population anyway, humans, much the same, pretty much no matter where we happen to live. And so I did not understand why a massive overperformance for Trump in Florida should teach me nothing about the rest of the evening. And so I rejected their insistence that I was wrong ahead of time. And I said, oh, geez, fuck, Abe. I texted you a screenshot of the Florida returns, and he was up like 13 points or something at that point. And I was like, this is not great
This is
for the rest of the evening, probably.
Yeah.
And that turned out to be entirely accurate in terms of the way the rest of the night was going to go.
No, you had it right.
What a fucking bummer of a night.
At least it was decisive, clean victory,
Yeah. Anyway, we'll leave. I guess we'll leave our election talk.
Yeah.
Fucking better. And now I'm bummed.
At that.
I take back what I said earlier. Not fine. Bad. Fucking bad. Are we doing the right show, or are we doing this?
We're not talking any more politics.
All right.
Look, how can you possibly come on? Look, I wanted to do an emergency pod last night to get it out of my system, but decided against it ultimately because I wanted to allow my takes to properly bake over the course of the next few days. But how can we possibly come on here and not mention that which happened on
You know what
Tuesday
else happened
night?
on Tuesday? Fucking CFP rankings came out,
that's right.
and I don't know why
Segue.
they didn't make it last 6 hours. They should have done like a describe the team, describe the record.
That's not true. They should not. They should not have even drawn it out the full fucking
No, they
15 minutes that they
said,
did.
all right.
They should
Starting with number 57.
put out the list and tell us that we don't need the drama. We just need the list, because crucially, it doesn't matter at all, because this doesn't determine anything about what's going to be
but it
done
would have been distracting.
6 weeks from now.
Right.
That won't stop us from talking about it, though. And the college football playoff rankings for November 5th, largely as expected, I think. Oregon number 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia 3, Miami 4. I disagree with the way that they've lined those first 4 up, certainly. I think that Georgia belongs in the number 2 slot because they've played a much more difficult schedule than Ohio State has, and both have one loss. Both losses, I mean, not great Georgia loss, the one to Alabama now, since Alabama has not looked quite so great in the time since that happened. And Ohio State's loss, of course, is to undefeated Oregon. But Ohio State hasn't played anybody besides Oregon, so I don't understand putting them in there at number 2. On the other hand, Georgia beats Ole Miss this weekend, and I suspect that those will flip-flop at the very least.
The only decent team Ohio State's going to play down the road is Indiana. And so, yeah, you're right. I think if Ole Miss
which, by the way, is another team that you, if you're doing an honest accounting of things, hasn't played anybody either.
Yes.
They've scored a ton of points. They've looked very good. Cignetti is the talk of the town, the toast of college football, but they haven't really played anybody.
Right,
either.
but you know what they say, just because you haven't beat anyone doesn't mean you can't beat them. You just haven't. Give it time.
They seem to be, as a general rule, counting your good losses as not terribly punishing.
Yeah.
Right? Like Texas's loss to Georgia doesn't seem to be harming them at all. They're in there at number 5. Penn State's loss to Ohio State doesn't harm them at all. They're in there at number 6. Tennessee's loss to Arkansas hasn't hurt them. So it's like the good losses don't hurt you, and the bad wins don't really hurt you either. Like having a bunch of wins against not very good teams doesn't really
That's true,
hurt
but
you.
I mean, like Alabama's the first 2-loss team, and they appear at 11, right? So basically, you're ranking the best undefeated and 1-loss teams in the top 10.
Which, by the way, they have to be doing some voodoo eye work here in order to get Alabama above Boise State and SMU probably, because Boise State's only loss is to undefeated BYU, and BYU is 8-0 in the Big 12, and for some reason, is ranked at number 9 below Texas and Penn State and Tennessee, not to mention Georgia and Ohio State, who all have one loss. So that doesn't seem terribly fair to BYU.
That is true. I do wonder why they did it this way. I mean, like the Alabama-LSU game this weekend is a loser leaves town match, right? You can't imagine one of them will have 3 losses after this. They're not getting in.
Right, and the Georgia Ole Miss game is an elimination game, not for Georgia, but for Ole Miss, almost certainly.
Yeah. So, like, basically, like, the dust will settle and there won't be an issue with this, the rankings that we see right now. But it is interesting how they place them. I guess maybe they did it just to kind of for the talk shows during the week. Maybe that's why they did it this way.
Yeah. It is interesting also that Georgia is ranked number 3, but I think ends up in the number 2 slot if they were doing the playoff bracket. Right. So in the bracket, we're actually the 2 seed, even though we're ranked number 3 overall, because the top 4 conference champs get those 4 byes, right? So Oregon number 1, Georgia number 2, BYU 4, Miami 3. So even though BYU is 9th in the current ranking, because they would be, if the season ended today, an undefeated conference champion, they get that 4th spot in the seeding rather than, despite being ranked number 9, as silly as that is. And then Boise, of course, gets in there at number 12 as the 12 seed, even though Boise is, well, they're actually ranked number 12, so that ends up being the same thing. The playoff matchups for that first round are awfully fun, certainly. You've got Notre Dame traveling to Penn State, Alabama traveling to Texas, Boise traveling to Ohio State, and Indiana traveling to Tennessee would be the matchups if this was the actual playoff bracket.
Oh, wow. You mentioned that Georgia's 3rd in the rankings, but they're 2nd based on the bracket. In the futures, like the odds, Ohio State is the favorite. They're the favorites. They're plus 325 over Oregon and Georgia, who are at plus 400. And I wonder what that is. What's behind that? Like, why are they
to make the playoffs at all?
To win the national title.
Oh, to win the national title. I imagine it has to do with the path. If you look right now, they have the most favorable. That's the thing, is so Georgia would have to play the winner of Notre Dame or Penn State. Oregon would have to play the winner of Indiana, Tennessee. Miami would have to play the winner of Alabama, Texas, which is a fucking brutal draw.
That is a tough draw.
And then BYU plays the winner of Boise, Ohio State. So you would imagine Ohio State handles Boise at home and then plays their semifinal game against BYU and is okay, right? Like if you're in terms of a path at this point, Ohio State, if this was how the bracket actually shakes out in 5 weeks, probably has the easiest path to the national title game.
Okay, that makes sense.
Although Georgia, I would think, Georgia can handle either Penn State or Notre Dame.
Well, we have to first.
But on the other hand, Georgia's got probably the second hardest remaining schedule in the country after Florida.
That Georgia finishes, what are we now? 1 loss, whatever. Like,
if we beat, we got to beat Tennessee, got to beat Ole Miss.
Ohio State's got not shit.
Right, we got to beat Ole Miss and then Tennessee, and then we have UMass and Georgia Tech, and then presumably, in all likelihood anyway, Texas again in the SEC championship game. So the path to hanging on to that number 2 seed is probably toughest for Georgia.
We can do it.
The Big 12 is not likely to get a second team at this point. If they hadn't already been cannibalizing themselves, this first playoff picture certainly makes it look like whoever comes out of the Big 12 is going to get the one and only Big 12 playoff spot, while the Big 10 and the SEC are looking at getting at minimum 3 and possibly 4 teams each in. Also, it strikes me as just sort of ridiculous that Notre Dame is going to be in this playoff after what they've accomplished this season, which was...
Don't they have Army this weekend?
They have Army, and they beat...
Could be interesting.
They housed Navy, though. Navy last week turned the ball over a couple of times, and Notre Dame rather quickly ran away with things. And who knows? Maybe Army is good. I don't know that they can compete with Notre Dame. But Notre Dame got that win against Texas A&M early in the season, which was looked good at the time, and then looked not as good, and then looked really, really good, and then looked not as good again after A&M lost. And otherwise, that loss to NIU, and then not looking terribly great against a relatively easy schedule since then. I don't know. I don't know if Notre Dame actually belongs in the conversation, but that goes for just about every season that Notre Dame is ranked near the top. Any other comments, questions, or complaints about this top 12, Lori or Abe?
That it didn't take all night, and that sucked. And they should do better next time that they decide to release this on an election year.
Did they? I did not catch the broadcast. They did like a 30 minutes like presentation kind of thing, like.
Yeah, they had Reese Davis.
Like 30 minutes doing, all right, number 25.
Okay.
Reese Davis gave a very corny 5-minute opening essay comparing all of this to the Electoral College and that sort of thing.
Okay.
And then he and...
Did you not have a cough drop in the first place? That's bad planning. You should plan.
I was getting over this whole cough thing. And then I fucking throat punched myself with a workout bench this afternoon and almost broke my neck.
You what?
I was doing my push-up routine.
Yeah.
We have a bench that he has already broken. He's bent the seat of it.
Yeah.
Because it was not meant to be used the way he uses it.
Right. It's like,
so,
it's one
he
of those
rendered
adjustable,
this thing useless.
It's one of those adjustable, like incline adjustable bench press benches, right? Like, but a cheap one.
I used to be able to use it for that, and then he only used one side of it, so he bent it.
Right.
So the thing, you couldn't lay your back on it and do any.
Just kind of wiggles and wobbles.
You shouldn't.
But
did that inspire confidence when you're like,
No. But I had been using it basically as my incline bench, so that I put either my feet up on it to do decline push-ups when the moment calls, or I use it as an incline to do incline push-ups on with my hands on it, and eventually, as Lori is saying, it sort of bent slightly out of shape. And then today, I was on my second circuit, my little push-up routine that I do every day, and I'm doing the push-up, and I go down, and then I push back up, and the thing, the little screw that was keeping the bench top in place on top of the steel bar that it's sitting upon, just rips right out, and so the bench comes flipping up, and my hands go straight down.
Oh no!
And my head goes directly into the fucking thing, right? And because I'm in a push-up position, my head is slightly up anyway, right?
Yeah.
And so I just, like, I was probably an inch from crushing my trachea.
Good
Like, I
Lord.
got very lucky with the situation. And, like, either crushing my trachea or breaking my neck, because I'm, whatever. It was potentially much worse than it ended up being, but I find myself laying on the ground with a good deal of pain in my knee, because I came down hard on my knee on the ground, but also kind of hard on my hands. And then all of my weight, just my neck, like my throat, basically right onto the fucking bench top.
Ouch.
And I literally said out loud to myself after a second or two, "You're okay. You're fine. Everything's fine. Nothing's fucked." Like, I was talking to myself, like trying to get my bearings in the situation. And like, I have this flash of my daughter, who's going to be coming home in an hour or something, like finding her crumpled dead father on the floor of the basement when she's like, "Daddy, Daddy." And then she comes down the basement stairs, and I'm just fucking in a heap on the floor, dead. Like, that would have sucked.
That would have been
it would have sucked a lot.
Yeah.
And I texted Lori. I was like, "Hey, I almost just broke my neck on the fucking incline bench, but I'm okay, so it's fine."
I'm glad you're doing better. You never thought like, hey, this thing it has lost its integrity. Maybe I should not.
No, do you understand what Bob hangs on to? It's trash. He hangs on to actual garbage.
Yeah.
He will learn nothing from this.
That would have been a rough ending for you.
I mean, it all worked out. There's some
This time.
There's some bubbled off alternative universe in which I'm crumpled in a dead heap on the ground, obviously, but
I assume
not this one.
I assume this is the end of this piece of equipment, right? You're not.
Yeah. I won't be using that piece of equipment anymore. I put a folding chair there now as my new incline bench, and actually, it increases the level of difficulty for the incline push-ups because I have to keep my arms closer than the bench would allow me to.
Yeah.
So better for the triceps. Anyway, would have been a nice cherry on top of Lori's week after Tuesday to have a dead me at home trying to do push-ups. All right, we can move off the college football playoff, I suspect.
Yeah, looks good so
Yeah.
far.
I will say one last thing.
We're moving off of it.
The fact that it looks like the Big Ten is going to get 3 or possibly 4, like plausibly could get 4 teams in because the main players in that league don't really play each other anymore, right? If you've got Penn State, Indiana, Ohio State, and Oregon all getting in, then you're probably – and then you throw in the fact that Boise State has to get in, the Big 12 champion has to get in. That's 6 already. Notre Dame makes 7, and then you have to have at least one ACC team. That makes 8. That's a maximum of 4 SEC teams getting in. And in all likelihood, like if SMU beats Miami or something, they're not keeping an otherwise undefeated Miami team out. So that's going to end up being 2 ACC teams getting in. And that maxes out the SEC at 3. The SEC is going to throw a fucking fit if you only get, say, Georgia, Texas, and one other team in, I think.
Yeah.
And that's
We'll see. It's going to be fun.
that's the quickest path to playoff expansion is the SEC or the Big Ten being upset about.
The quickest path is nothing. It's going to 14 in 2 years.
Yeah, but the shortest path to expansion is the SEC or the Big Ten not getting the teams in that they believe they deserve.
Weren't they floating the idea of those 2 conferences like minimum slots for those 2 conferences?
They're working on it.
Yeah, they want to assure
For this
that
14
yeah.
thing.
All right, what else we got in the
Napier staying.
WGAS Sports NewsBag? Billy Napier, it was announced today, got the dreaded vote of confidence from his athletic director.
What's interesting is that he is on a multi-year contract, right? So this is basically just to kind of put out the fire of speculation,
Yeah.
right? So it's like you typically wouldn't need to say like this guy is our guy when he's got many years left to go. But I am surprised that they got ahead of it. Like they're not even waiting for the season to unfold.
Well, they play Texas, and then they play LSU, and then they play Ole Miss, and then they play Florida State. So there is 1 win left on that schedule in all likelihood, unless they really shock the world.
Right.
Here. So what he's getting ahead of is the fact that he's going to lose the next 3 SEC games that he has on his schedule, and in all likelihood not be bowl eligible.
Right, but why is the athletic director getting ahead of it? I mean, it's good news for Napier, but like, why is?
Because he doesn't want to fucking hear it. We're not firing Billy Napier.
But
He's getting
Shut
ahead
up.
of it because Napier is probably saying you got to do something here because I'm going to
Like,
all
I
these
gotta do
crew
something. You gotta
towns.
do something. You fucking loser.
Yeah,
Win
that's
some
why it's
goddamn-
the recruits.
It's the Croots. You've got
I see. Yeah.
You've got Kirby and you've got whoever else in the league, Kalen DeBoer and other coaches who are probably like, look, you don't want to go to Florida. Florida's about to fire Billy Napier. You have no
Mario
idea what's
Cristobal.
going to happen there. So, yeah, they need some sort of vote of assurance that he's going to stick around for a little while.
So this vote of assurance is just to solidify the recruiting class. So they could still fire him. Like if things go, because like what if like it's not?
But
it's
they're not going to.
It's not that you lose; it's how you lose. So like if they just shat the bed, like they're best.
Well, the other end of it. Well, I mean, what's shitting the bed look like against Texas, LSU, and Ole Miss at this point?
just like
now,
pants, just like 30-point defeats, not like like what they did against Georgia, which is like hey, we gave it a go, we're just not that good. Like
they're going to be at least 2 touchdown underdogs against Texas, I would imagine. I didn't even look at the number. What is the number there? It's like 3, isn't it? Isn't it like 20, 21 points?
I was just there, but I'm not there now.
22.5.
Yeah, so 22.5 points underdogs to Texas. They're going to be at least 2 touchdown, or maybe, I don't know, 10.5 underdog to LSU at home in the Swamp. And then I would imagine at least 2 touchdown underdogs to Ole Miss. Like, they're going to get their asses kicked for the next 3 weeks. And then they've got to beat Florida State. Like, you could almost salvage something from this season as long as you don't lose to the worst Florida State team in a generation.
See, that would be his undoing. He loses to Florida State somehow. I don't see it. You can't keep this guy on.
Yeah, I don't know. Florida. The other thing is that like Florida's got a weird administrative situation because Ben Sasse was their president for like 18 months and then
The
quit.
former senator. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so he left the Senate to go become the president of the University of Florida, and then is gone already for some apparently drama-filled reasons. He blamed it on, or he didn't blame it on. He said he was going. His wife had a stroke and she's gotten worse or something.
Okay.
So he said he had to go spend more time with the family. But apparently there was some drama with the what do they call the board at a college? It's like the trustees or whatever. There was some drama with the board of trustees. One of those administrators was trying to like get between him and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Whatever, it's some stupid political stuff. But
the wife issue is real, and like had it not been this conflict with the board, he would have just said like, "Figure it out, lady." Like,
I mean, I don't know. I mean, Ben Sasse said it was so that he could spend more time
Okay.
with the old lady. Let's just take him at his
Yes.
word. He seems to be
it's a
an
weird thing to lie
upstanding
about. I mean,
individual. His exit from the Senate and his cowardice in the face of the trumpeting notwithstanding seems to be a fairly upstanding individual. But the point just being that there's drama there at the University of Florida.
Okay.
They have an interim president who was the president there before Sasse took over. And so maybe the AD down there is like, if I replace this fucking coach and then I get a new president, the president's just going to be like, well, you both got to go anyway.
Right.
So like maybe he's like he's keeping Napier around in case there's a new president who then is like, you got to do something here. He's like, okay, I'll get rid of Napier. That sounds like a plan. But if he's just made a head coaching change, then maybe he won't have that maneuverability moving forward. And besides, it'll cost them. I mean, the buyout is $26 million. I read a piece today that said that the total cost to paying off the entire staff and like moving on to the next guy is like probably closer to $40 million overall. So they would have to spend about $40 million just to get Napier moved out the door, and that's before they even think about signing somebody new. So it's not a cheap proposition, right. And also they're going to have to start paying recruits. They got to pay kids. Yeah. They're going to be paying them $25 million out of their pocket starting next year. It seems like so. It's not an inexpensive thing anymore to just do away with your coach. What else in the WGAS sports bag for this week?
The Colbie Young thing.
Do we want to talk about the
No,
domestic
you're
violence
asking
thing?
what else?
Woman wants charges against Georgia's Colbie Young dismissed. The woman involved in an altercation that led to the arrest and suspension of Georgia wide receiver Colbie Young last month has retracted her statement to police and requested that all criminal charges against him be dropped, according to an affidavit provided to ESPN on Wednesday by Young's attorney. So he was arrested for beating up his pregnant girlfriend back at the beginning of October, and she has apparently recanted whatever testimony she gave to the police. From the statement, I did go to Colbie's apartment late at night to talk to him about our relationship and my pregnancy. Colbie asked me to leave more than once while I was there. I did not leave until I became upset with him and did not think our conversation was productive. Colbie did not place his hands on me in any way during the conversation and argument that was inappropriate or unwanted. He did not hit me. He did not push me. He did not cause any bruising or marks on me. He did not injure me in any way.
Does this not expose her to charges of filing a false report or anything like that?
What exactly is a charge of filing a false report in the face of a big pile of cash that somebody probably handed her?
Well, also I remember in Georgia specifically, I don't know about everywhere, it's like I forget what it is. It's once you call the cops for domestic violence, you have to file charges. Like you don't have the option not to, because of all the times that that people would call and say like, hey, my boyfriend's beating me up. And then the police get there and they're like, actually, everything's fine. Bye. Yeah. Like they don't give you that option for obvious reasons.
Right.
So it's just complicated, and I don't know that I believe anyone.
He obviously did something stupid,
right,
which is being a young man who gets a 20-year-old girl pregnant is not the best series of decisions that he made, obviously. And probably, if we're going least common denominator here and the Occam's razor of the situation, he probably did, in fact, put his hands on her after getting upset after she showed up and tried to instigate some shit. Is my, like, just if we're guessing here.
Yeah, that sounds about
probably.
Right. Yeah.
There was some hands were thrown as a result of some screaming and yelling. Not a great situation, but, like, also, you kind of got to put him back on the team now, don't you? Like,
I mean, yeah, because, like, technically, like, he's in the clear, right?
Yeah, like, you can't, how long can you hold this against someone?
Right.
Forever?
Yeah.
It's complicated.
It's deeply unpleasant. And the only thing that you can do as a fan of this awful, awful sport is shrug and pretend like it never happened.
Right, yes.
And just go back to rooting for your team.
Right.
Let's see. What else we got in the news bag
The
this week?
injury report on the Ole Miss Georgia game. It's funny.
Lane Kiffin under fire over Ole Miss injury report for Georgia game. On Wednesday, the Rebels released a curious injury report that added to the speculation that Lane Kiffin has, at times this season, directed his players to fake injuries to stop the clock during games. Multiple SEC schools have complained about Ole Miss feigning injuries. On Friday, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey sent a memo to conference head coaches and athletic directors regarding an updated policy on feigned injuries. The national coordinator would review questionably timed injuries. The penalty for faking injuries would result in fines for the school for the first 2 offenses. After that, each offense would result in a coach being suspended for the next game. With Ole Miss facing scrutiny from its conference members for faking injuries, the injury report released Wednesday had many names on it. Per ESPN's Pete Thamel, 26 players were added to the report. He's put both lines and most of his skill position receivers on the questionable, doubtful, probable injury report. So the idea here being that he's trying to
they might all be injured.
Right.
He's trying to game the fake injuries that are coming by saying, well, they were hurt to begin with, so of course they were hurt during the game. Is this a good solution to the problem of players faking or potentially faking injuries? Is
no solution that involves Lane Kiffin is
good. The fine to the school before the suspension to the coach?
I mean, I guess what would be the alternative to determine the faking on the field? Like, it would have to be kind of like, let's process this information and decide.
But how are they going to judge it? How are they going to say, no, this person was not in pain at the moment that he went down on the field?
But
like,
that's a good point. You know, there have been occasions where, like, just somebody's like flagging somebody, hey, you go down. I mean, those are the obvious cases. And then other times, like, everything is fine, and then some like fat player, like a lineman, just sits down. And he's like,
Speaking of, earlier today, I was doing my push-ups, and I nearly collapsed my trachea against the push-up bar. And you know what I was doing 30 seconds later? I was fucking doing my push-ups again. I was fine, as it turned out, right? But in the moment, I'm literally laying in a heap on the floor, talking to myself out loud. You're okay. No, you definitely didn't just nearly die. You're fine. I freaked myself out. But then, fucking 30 seconds later, it's like, well, gotta fucking do the work. Gotta chop the wood.
Right.
Gotta get back on the horse.
It would have to. They would have to reserve this for, like, obvious. Like, if it's it could go either way. Like, how can you tell? You have to let it slide.
It seems so obvious to me that if a player needs help off the field, a designated amount of time. Not game time, real life time, like 5 minutes, not an amount of plays, not a drive, a number of minutes that they're required to not. If you can't get yourself off the field, if you just need a moment, you can get yourself off the field. If you are so not okay that we need to stop play,
right,
then you're not okay enough to wait 5 minutes.
So this is like,
or 3 minutes, or whatever it is.
Yeah. So this is like the you know how they have that stupid, like, if you can steer it, clear it. Like on the road, like, instead of having, like, if you get into like a minor accident on the road, like, don't ruin it for everybody else. Just park your car on that lane. Like, move it over and then discuss. Like,
it's a good rule. But does anybody ever get the ticket for failing to move their car to the shoulder?
No.
I mean, I know that they get honked at and they get the bird flipped at them because they're just they got a little fender bender and they're just standing there taking up 3 lanes of traffic for no good reason.
Right.
But does anybody ever actually get punished for that?
No, I don't. I don't think. I
so.
don't have the stats here, but I imagine they don't. That's why they have to reserve this for the egregious, like, come on cases at first to kind of build credibility for this whole thing, and then move on to the ticky-tacky ones.
Yeah, it needs to be cleaned up in some fashion, and
Yeah.
this is a fine attempt at doing that. And Lane trolling everybody with his 30-person-long injury report is exactly what you would expect from a Lance Kiffin type.
Definitely.
Especially the week that he finds out that he's probably not getting the Florida job because the Florida job is staying with Billy Napier. And he might be fucking stuck in Oxford for another season, God forbid. Another piece of news in the WGAS Sports Newsbag is that Kirk Herbstreit and his dog died. His dog, who's got a person's name, which is poor
Our
form.
dog has a person's name.
I didn't name our dog, and I reject that it's a good name.
You didn't?
Oh, that's like a rule
So-
of yours?
It was consensus. We named her. But you've had dogs with Bruce.
Bruce is a demonstrably hilarious name for a dog, rather than just being a person's name. Bruce is actually a hilarious name
Bruce,
for a dog.
yes. Ben, no. That's the.
Ben is not hilarious.
Okay.
Ben is not funny at all. Ben is the lamest possible human
Well,
name
he's
for
dead,
a dog.
so
And now he's dead. Ben was a golden retriever, it's worth noting. The lifespan of the average golden retriever is 10 to 12 years. They're not a long-lived
no,
kind
they're
of dog.
big
And this one died of leukemia at the age of 10.
yeah.
This
Obviously, sad.
this
Funny
may be
notification to get though.
this may be an insensitive.
Somehow made me laugh.
It's an insensitive question. Do they do advanced screenings on dogs? Like, you know how they like if you're like
Yes.
45, you gotta get some sort
You
of
can
like
do anything.
Okay. Because you would think like if there's like a high chance of whatever cancer this dog has.
Well, at 10, I think so many dogs get cancer. Like
Right.
at that age, you're gonna die from something.
But you think,
I'm
like at 8 years old, we got to do something, run some tests to see if we can get ahead of this.
I'm sure he's a lovely animal, and I'm glad that that he had a nice life with Kirky Herbstreit there. Speaking of insensitive questions, though, there are people who spend thousands of dollars on, like tens of thousands of dollars, on health treatments for their dogs and other pets.
Yes.
I know that they love them, and it's fine. I will say, people who talk about having fur children or whatever,
Yeah.
it's too much.
But
you need to
he
dial
didn't
it
do
back.
that.
I'm not saying that he did. I'm not suggesting that Kirk Herbstreit is in any way. Like, Kirk didn't go to the fucking Mayo Clinic with his dog and be like, look, there's no amount of money that I will not pay for you to get this cancer out of my dog, right? Like, he didn't go to St. Jude's and be like, look, I know that he's an old dog,
Right.
but what can you do for him in terms of treatment to keep him alive? He just said, no, this cancer has spread to multiple organs, and it's time to let the dog go because otherwise he's going to have a miserable life. So good for Kirk here, obviously. But people spend obscene amounts of money keeping their pets alive. And not to go the whole like Sarah Palin death panels route here,
Right.
but I also find the amount of money spent on keeping seniors, like super seniors, alive, to be a bit much sometimes.
Are you talking about Lee Corso? Are you saying that we should euthanize Lee Corso?
I don't know.
It sounds like it's what you're saying.
What is Lee Corso's current situation? How much are we spending? Because
I don't know.
He's like fucking 90, right?
Right. But
I
he's
don't know.
physically
And-
fine. He's just mentally like not as sharp, right? Like I don't think he's still hanging
We
around.
don't know.
Yeah.
What is his health problem? Is it just
I
that
mean,
he's
he's
old?
he had that stroke, right, or some sort of stroke-like thing, and then he's old, and those two things are a bad combo.
Stroke in 2009 and other medical events leading to sporadic appearances in recent years.
Wow, he's
Like,
had
he's
it for
on
15 years. 2009. Wow.
The point here is that the American healthcare system, the American taxpayer, is keeping Lee Corso alive. And I'm just saying there are better uses for our resources than continuing to spend an outsized amount of money on people who are past a certain age. At some point, we should all just be Jimmy Carter entering hospice care, saying, look, had a good run.
He's still doing fine.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's doing fine. But like they could be spending essentially an infinite amount of money on Jimmy Carter trying to keep him alive.
What's to say they're not?
And that's all like taxpayer money, right?
Free?
He's still
hospice care isn't free, but it's not the whole point of hospice care is like we're not fucking treating anything anymore, right? Like we'll give you your fucking vitamins and we'll make sure that your belly's full, but otherwise you're on your own, right? And it's just between you and God at this point, which is why Jimmy's been, I mean, obviously a very spiteful, angry God is keeping Jimmy alive at this point. But
do you think that Jimmy is aware of
outsized amount of American taxpayer money is what's keeping Jimmy alive, is what I'm saying.
You know, speaking of the spending a lot of money on your pet, in high school, when I was working at Domino's, one of the drivers I was cool with, I think he was driving me home, and we're just kind of shooting the shit, and like he was telling me about his dog. He's got this pet. And something stomach. Something was up with the stomach. And I was just thinking, well, that's the end of that, right? And in my head, I didn't say it. And he goes on to tell me next time that I saw him, like, he spent like $5,000 on some surgery related to his stomach. And $5,000 to him might as well be $100,000. Like, it is a significant portion of his income. And he did not think...
I like that you referred to this person as someone you were cool with.
This isn't my brother and my sister-in-law spending $3,500 on their dog's dental work.
Right.
Like, which is an obscenity, by the way.
It wasn't that much.
I believe it was.
What did you just say?
$3,500 on the dog's dental work.
I thought you said $35,000.
But to them, that's like what? Like $20, right? I mean, it's all like a relative cost, right? To him, it was...
Wait, what is that? 2 football tickets is what that is.
That's right. That's 10% of a weekend
to
Austin.
Evening.
Yeah.
So in that respect, it makes sense that if you have a good relationship with your pet. But just I was like, you're gonna go bankrupt over, and what is that gonna get you? Like 6 more months? I don't know. Like I don't know. I don't have any pets, so I guess I don't get it. But people do spend a lot of money.
We put down 3 cats in like 18 months or something, right? Like all of our cats died in fairly short order. And we spent a good amount of money keeping them going. But when it came to like, when the question was, well, we could continue with her medicine or we could send her to Richmond or wherever the fuck. And for like $4,500, she could have this surgery. And I'm like,
yeah, no.
Yeah.
No, this is a fucking 13 or 14-year-old cat or whatever she was at the time. We're not spending fucking $4,500 to get another 18 months out of it. Like I love the cat. She's very important to me. But also,
it was Penny. We didn't love her that much.
Well, yeah, but like, would we have spent $5,000 to keep Holden alive another 18 months?
No, but don't talk about it.
That's the thing. Even the pet that we love the most out of all of them, like at some point you have to recognize that this is an incredibly selfish thing to do, to keep the pet alive for your own personal gratification. Like it's not like the pet fucking cares. Like I know that it wants to be alive rather than dead, but it doesn't have any real concept of self. It doesn't have consciousness in the way that we do.
As far as we know, maybe they do. You know, we just don't know it.
No, they don't.
Look, I'm a person who, instead of smashing the bug that my daughter demanded that I remove from her,
there was a moth in her room.
Like
it was quite large.
I got the moth in a cup and I covered it with a napkin and I put it outside. Like I don't want to needlessly cause death, right? I'm very Eastern in that regard, right? But at the same time, you must recognize that your relationship with your pet is unidirectional. Like I mean, not unidirectional, but it is extremely. It's like a 6-lane highway in one direction and a dirt road in the other direction, right? Like it's not. This is not equivalent here in terms of what you're putting in.
There's
and what
a
you're
lot of
out.
Asymmetry in the relationship,
right? There's a good bit of asymmetry here. So like, I understand, and I suppose if you're a person with means and you're already doing a lot of good in the world, then fine. But I can assure you that $4,500 can be better spent than wringing another 6 months or 9 months out of your pet.
So your position is that life sometimes is cost prohibitive, and just like let it run its course.
Yes. Pets, children, retards, and women.
And Lee Corso.
Period. Right. And Lee Corso. And men over 80.
I just thought, and it is because I knew already. I knew that Ben died.
Yeah.
I knew from Twitter. But for moments later to get a Twitter notification that says Kirk Herbstreit's dog died, like there was I looked at it and laughed because like, why are you telling me that someone's dog died? Like dogs die all the time.
Wasn't this dog?
At least the New York Times didn't send it out as a push notification, right? We're not quite that far.
I turned off those because they suck.
Although the Athletic is under the umbrella of the Times, right? Or there's some sort of connection.
And they led with it on the fucking front page of the Athletic. Is Kirk Herbstreit's dog is dead?
Little news day. Wasn't this dog on the field like a couple weeks ago? Like
all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, no, he's always in the booth.
Whenever he met Uga and he met the Texas A&M one, he goes wherever.
He has
Kirk
almost
goes.
certainly smelled Al Michaels' crotch.
Yeah, he goes wherever Kirk goes, like Al Michaels' crotch.
All right, we'll wrap up the WGAS Sports Newsbag. That was Who Gives a Shit Sports. It's now time to discuss the best game in every time slot. Right. This is our way of previewing the weekend's sports action. And we will start with the Friday night slate. There's a bonus Friday night game, of course, every week. And not a bunch of great games, to be perfectly honest. However, Iowa is -6 at UCLA on Friday night at 9 o'clock. If you're desperate
No, you watch British Baking Show.
Friday night sports action, you can watch Iowa at UCLA. Otherwise, watch the British Bake Off on Netflix. But, the college football weekend starts in earnest at noon, allegedly. Pat McAfee has run his nipples lovingly across Nick Saban's back for the last time. And Reese Davis has tossed it to the noon kick. I think that the game in the noon window to watch is Navy -2.5 at South Florida. Like it's not a great slate.
Yeah.
To start the weekend. The second TV at that time was the other option, which is Miami, the number 4 ranked team.
That's the one.
In all the land, -11 or 10.5 at Georgia Tech. That game's got an over/under of 63.5, and Haynes King is apparently on the mend and should play in that game.
Oh, that's exciting.
So maybe Miami runs into some trouble down there at historic Mark Richt Field at Bobby Dodd Stadium in downtown Atlanta, though I doubt it. But who knows? Could be an interesting game. But that's
Miami's games have all been interesting until the very end, where they get boring.
Yeah. That's true. They're always worth keeping an eye on, certainly. Anything else in that noon window catch your eye?
Syracuse.
Syracuse at BC might also be worth keeping an eye on. Not that BC is any good, but
they're favored, aren't they?
They are favored at home. That's a weird number. Syracuse +2 on the road at BC.
Why do you think I picked it?
Like I said, not a lot going on there in the noon window. 3:30 window, on the other hand, that's where things get interesting. My fucking kid's got a soccer game.
Yeah, that's rough.
What time is the soccer game?
Fucking 3:30.
Oh, you're missing the Georgia Ole Miss start? Or
yeah,
the whole...
well, but we have YouTube TV, and you have your earbuds that I found, which you never told the people.
That's true.
I found the earbuds.
We never updated my earbuds situation. A couple of weeks ago, Lori, after, I don't know, a month or 6 weeks of them being missing, Lori stumbled upon my earbuds on the basement floor.
There was detective work because I found the case, but not the earbuds. And I had to, imagine if it fell, where could it have gone?
So you're retracing?
Like blood splatter analysis, yes.
And you're able to find them?
I found them. Bob was happy.
I was happy. At no point had I ordered fresh earbuds in the intervening time because I said, I'm going to live like it's fucking pre-earbud era, and we're going to be just fine. And I was fine. I was that obnoxious guy running around the neighborhood at 6 a.m. with my favorite podcast playing on my phone in my hand. Fortunately, there's nobody else really out that early in the morning, so I didn't bother anyone.
Now that you know where they ended up, could you figure out like, oh, it all makes sense now? I dropped it.
So I'm pretty sure that I was refilling the dog food because we keep, of course, because we have this fucking dog who we will not spend $4,500 on to keep alive. Just
Also,
obviously.
Ben was probably $2,000+ just to get.
Yeah, because he's a purebred golden retriever
not a
type,
rescue
but
kind of thing?
Our dog was free.
that's right. No, he couldn't hold his morality over all of us by saying he's a rescue,
Right,
Ben.
but-
He was not a rescue. He was a golden retriever. But our dog was a garbage dog that was found on the side of the street. And so obviously minimal amounts of money will be spent keeping her alive in the event that anything goes horribly
She's
wrong.
a good girl. She's not.
Anyway, we have to order fucking food in like 50-pound
We don't have
bags.
to.
But the only efficient way to get the food on hand
The
is
best
to...
way to do it is to always order way more food than you need and not adjust your subscription so we just have giant piles of dog food all the time.
Yeah, I've got usually got a couple of 50-pound bags of dog food lying around.
Did that stuff expire?
No.
No.
It's like dry.
Dog. Are
It's
you
like,
kidding? She's a pit bull.
She doesn't fucking know anything.
She should be eating literal garbage.
Anyway, we get this. So in this giant tub bin where I keep the 50-pound bag of dog food, I have to get the Tupperware from upstairs, which is itself this big monstrous thing of Tupperware, which you then fill with the dog food. So I think what I did was I was filling the dog food Tupperware from the dog food tub bin and put the earbuds down next to me or something because that's roughly where they were found. And then they got knocked off of the bench onto the floor, which then became apparently more difficult to find. I think that's the answer.
That makes sense.
Well, I found them.
But then Lori found them, yeah. Anyway, 3:30
Anyway,
game.
you can watch that while you watch soccer.
Yes.
And I
Georgia-
can watch it while Katie's at ballet. It'll be fine.
Georgia minus 2.5 at number 16, Ole Miss. Over under of 54.5 points. Don't have to get into predictions at this point. I'm sure that we will touch on this in our CIB Pick'em thing. But I will say that's a weird number to me. I think Georgia wins this game fairly handily. I do not believe that Ole Miss, despite having put up truly impressive offensive numbers against some not very good teams, I don't worry about them too much. And actually, their defense has been pretty good. I think they lead the league or nearly lead the SEC in sacks. Like they're getting to the quarterback, they're causing chaos back there. But I don't know. I have a good feeling about this weekend. I'm not worried about Lance.
According to ESPN Analytics, they actually have, the predictometer. They have Ole Miss as the 54% favorite.
Yep. They do. They have for a lot of the games.
This is bullshit. I don't care.
It's a weird.
Do you know who else was a 50+% favorite to win on Tuesday?
Who's that, Bob?
It was Kamala Harris.
So Lance is Kamala.
Yeah, Lance is Kamala.
That is surprising. 46% for the much. Is it because just Ole Miss is at home? Is that the extent of it?
No, because these ESPN things have all these little nerdy factors.
Yeah.
That's why the Vegas people are like, no, probably Georgia.
I'm surprised they're not factoring in all of those injuries that Ole Miss has. You think that
They are.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're not.
Yeah.
Maybe because, I don't know.
I cannot. The one caveat that I will make to my vote of confidence for the Georgia Bulldogs is that if Carson Beck throws 3 picks again this weekend, we are not winning this game. No,
He's thrown 3 picks in the games we've won.
I know. That is not sustainable.
Maybe it's good luck.
That is not a sustainable thing to do. If he throws 3 picks again, there's 0% chance that we win this game. But I think it's going to be a fun game. I'm looking forward to it. Second TV at 3:30. You're going to need at least a double box, possibly the quad box, because there's some good second-tier games going on. First and foremost, at 4:15, South Carolina, minus 3.5, traveling to Vanderbilt. No respect for the fight in Diego Pavia's, and I don't understand it. I know that South Carolina had a nice win last week against
A&M.
Texas A&M at home. But that was Texas A&M at home. Vandy was on the road, and they whipped Auburn. Vandy beat Alabama. Vandy very nearly beat Texas. What are we doing here? Calling them a home underdog against the South Carolina Gamecocks. I don't understand.
I don't get it either. I'm going to ride Vandy until the wheels come off.
That's a $94 ticket. South Carolina is traveling to Vanderbilt. And if you go look at the ESPN list of games, it says that the cheapest available ticket for South Carolina at Vandy is $94.
Wow.
This is the new college football. It's great.
That's not a cheap ticket.
No, it's great.
There's lots to do in Nashville.
Yeah. That's that Pavia bump, right? I mean, like everybody wants to see this guy.
That's huge. This guy, you better fill his NIL coffers, or he's going to take off. Man.
He's a fifth-year senior.
I don't know. He'll find a way.
This guy needs to come to
Guy
the
is
Colts next year.
He's going to take off.
He's a fighter. Also in the 3:30 window at 4 o'clock, we've got Colorado -4 at Texas Tech, over under of 62.5 points. Colorado has a shot, if they can win out, of making it to the Big 12 championship game and facing BYU. This feels like a game that gets completely ridiculous. If the old fun and gun Texas Tech situation, maybe that comes back into play here.
Yeah.
But that seems like a fun game to watch. And then the other game I've got in this 3:30 window is Michigan +14 at number 8 Indiana. Let's see if Curt Cignetti can put it on a depleted Michigan team and keep things rolling. Because even if Michigan fucking sucks, this is one of those games that Indiana, as the number 8 team in the country, kind of needs in terms of like putting it on their resume. Like, there's not a lot of other games on their schedule that they can hang their hat on.
But also, there's still Michigan's still favored by a bunch, or is it opposite?
No. Michigan's catching two touchdowns.
Did you see the tickets for this game? It's over $200.
No.
Yeah,
Wow.
Indiana's a hot
Holy
ticket right now.
shit.
And then we can move on to the late evening games. We've got at 7:30, game of the day probably. Alabama, -3 points, traveling
And the
to...
storm that they were going to have it's not coming.
Lori interrupting with a weather report to let us know that no weather is happening.
There was going to be, I'm going to check again, but there was going to be a big storm that would make it a bummer, but now I think it's going away.
It'll be clear.
I'm checking.
Alabama -3 at
It might still
LSU.
storm. We'll see.
As Abe just let us know, it is the most expensive ticket this weekend.
Makes sense.
$255 is the cheapest ticket to get into the stadium there. At LSU, a home night game against Alabama. Always a fun game. Always a must-watch game is the Alabama-LSU matchup every season.
Maybe don't bet on that one.
Yeah, I'm staying away from that one until 5 minutes before the game when I decide, oh, man, I know exactly what's going to happen. And I throw $25 on the game and the over-under in order to just throw money away, because that's what I do. Also in the 7 o'clock window, it feels like a quad box kind of night. We've got UCF +2.5 at Arizona State. UCF, again, maybe the most inexplicable team in all of college football because they win games by huge numbers and lose games by unexpectedly large numbers as well, and for some reason are catching points as they go to Arizona State after racking up a big win last week. Oklahoma State +10.5 at TCU is probably worth keeping an eye on as well. I think that's the biggest over-under of the weekend at 66.5 points, so presumably plenty of offense to be had in that game. We'll get into some Mike Gundy talk here in a moment, not to spoil the Jimmy Carter lock of the week or anything like that. And then I think a game that is worth watching in that 7 o'clock window is Mississippi State plus 24 at number 7 Tennessee. Mississippi State's offense has been more fun than they're getting credit for here in this game. 24 points they're catching.
Yeah, that's a lot of points.
Against Tennessee, who's not been great this season. I mean, I know Tennessee's defense has been pretty good, but it's not like Tennessee's offense has managed to put up a ton of fucking points throughout the season after they got done with their cupcake portion of their schedule. So I'm a little surprised at that number, and that there's going to be a small pile of money on Mississippi State, I think, for me.
Right.
When that game gets underway.
And Tennessee could be looking ahead, you never know. I could see them.
It is. It's a classic trap game at home before they have to travel to Athens. It's against one of the worst teams in the SEC.
Yeah.
24 points is a huge amount of points. And then there is, in unusual fashion, the last few weeks there hasn't been a good late game. But
last week there wasn't one at all.
Last week there wasn't one at all. And for weeks before that, it's been mostly watch something else on the streaming services rather than bother with the college football.
Well,
but at 10:15, we've got number 9 BYU at Utah, the Holy War game. Utah's been a bit of a disappointment this season.
Yeah.
They haven't been able to make it work with Cam Rising out, and even with Cam Rising in, they haven't lived up to expectations. But BYU has been awesome, winning close games and then also blowing out some games as well. Big 12 really needs BYU to run the table here and give themselves a shot in the playoff, I think. Losing this game would not be good, either for BYU or for the Big 12 at large. But I think that should be a fun game and certainly worth keeping an eye on because it's one of those classic rivalry games. Any other games that you want to discuss from this weekend schedule that I did not yet mention?
I mean, Clemson and Virginia Tech could be something.
Yeah, you would think this would be a get-right game for Clemson, but who knows? But
it doesn't matter because their season's fucked.
Yeah, they're
on the road in Blacksburg. That's a pretty penny ticket, too, $85 for that game. What else we got? Anything else?
No, not really.
Washington at Penn State, I think, might actually be kind of fun. Penn State is minus 14 in that game. Washington getting absolutely no respect. It's an 8 o'clock game. It's on Peacock, though. So
We have that.
we have it, but not everybody's going to be able to watch it.
Box.
You can't put it on the fucking quad box. We're going to need a third TV if we want to watch the fucking Penn State game.
Oh, we need a third TV then.
But that one might end up interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if Penn State fucking lays an egg this weekend against Washington. Fuck that, James Franklin. Don't trust him.
I mean, this is not they're not going against a top 10 team, so this is the kind of game they can win.
Yeah. Let's move into the CIB Pick'em game. Current standings, Lori is the caboose with 152 points. Cousin Steve at 157. Abe slowly creeping up on me with 175 points, but I'm still clear out in front with 235 points. Overall, Cousin Steve's picks, he's got Vanderbilt outright at home, which is a game that I would have picked except for the fact that Cousin Steve and Abe both picked it. So I'm staying away, much as I like Diego Pavia and the fighting commies. He's also got Oregon minus 24.5. He's got LSU at home as an outright dog. And then in the NFL, he wants the Niners minus 5.5 and the Lions minus 3.5. Both of those teams on the road. Niners minus 5.5 at the Bucks is a curiously small number because the Niners should be way better than the Bucks. And then the Lions minus 3.5 at the Texans. Abe, why don't you go ahead with your picks?
So I got Georgia, 2.5-point favorite against Ole Miss. I anticipate Georgia will have one more loss, but I imagine it will be against one of the orange teams, not Tennessee, maybe like Texas in the title game, but like you can't afford to have that second loss be against these bums. And so I'm confident Georgia is not. There's not going to be another 3-pick game. If there is, then I agree with you, Bob. They will lose, but. Georgia, 2.5. Vandy, I'm going to ride it until the wheels come off. Vandy.
Smart play.
Anytime LSU plays at night, just pick them. Even though Alabama is the better team, I'm just going to go with LSU. They'll find some goofy way to win at the end.
Who you're saying? Who will win?
He's
LSU.
taking LSU.
Yeah,
Okay.
LSU at home at night.
I hope that happens.
And then Alabama can just disappear forever. And then the last two picks are on the NFL side. Bills against the Colts. I'm just gonna keep picking against the Colts until they win.
Why are the Bills only -3.5 at Indianapolis? The Colts are dreadful. They don't have a quarterback.
Right. Any
And the Bills are kind of the class certainly of the AFC North at this point, and or East or whichever one they're in.
there must be some reason the line doesn't make sense. So I'm thinking this is an easy win, right? Like, this is an easy 5 points, 3.5. Come on.
Seems like it.
Yeah, and then the Steelers over the Tank Commanders. Even though DC has been playing well, or Washington has been playing well recently, they're due for a loss. Why not against the Steelers?
That sounds right. That fucking Mike Tomlin, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he'll figure it out.
Lori, what are your picks?
I said Miami will win by more than 10.5. Is that what that means?
Yep, Miami
Okay.
-10.5.
Yeah,
at
I think
Georgia
it'll
Tech.
be the same as it's been, where it's like close, and then all of a sudden Miami. Same with Army. Isn't Army undefeated?
Yep, Army is
Only 5.5.
-5.5 at the
No,
North
more
Texas
than
Mean
that.
Green.
North Texas? No, I'm saying what here with Indiana?
You appear to be saying Indiana outright, which just means that you would get 2 points here. So you're calling the 13.5 point favorite Indiana. You just want them.
Yeah.
Your second 2 point game of the season, I believe.
That's fine.
It's a bold decision from way back in the caboose. You're just like, just give me the 2 points.
I
Fuck
don't
it.
want to do this. South Carolina will win by more than 3, more than that against Vanderbilt.
Picking against
I
Cousin
am-
Steve and Abe, taking South Carolina
I
minus
am-
the points on the road.
I think South Carolina might have figured it out.
Oh.
You like Lenoris Sellers more than
I
Diego
do like
Pavia.
no. Well, that's okay. That's a little unfair. I like both of them. I think South Carolina almost beat Alabama, and I think South Carolina almost beat LSU.
South Carolina almost beat Alabama. I'll remind you what Vandy did.
I know. I just think South Carolina is getting better every game. I don't know.
Hey, it's not your pick, Bob.
What did
What's
I
with
pick
the
down
eye
here?
roll?
Yeah, I'm not picking for you. Leave me alone. And I think Syracuse will win.
Syracuse plus 1.5 at Boston College. Seems like a trap because why are they the underdog on the road at Boston College? I don't get it. They've had a pretty decent year, with an exception of a Friday night game. I think that they lost to some bum
They've lost a couple, but whatever.
Stanford or something. All right, my picks rather. I've got Georgia Tech plus the 10.5 at home against Miami. I like that Haynes King is expected to play, and I don't trust Cam Ward and the Hurricanes. They feel extremely overdue for an embarrassing loss. So I will take Tech, but I will also take the points.
Yeah, this is the other thing. I'm doing the thing where, like, I'll be happy if Miami loses. So, like, I'll be happy either way.
Right.
Because either I get points.
I will pick against Cousin Steve and Abe, and I'm taking Alabama minus 2.5 on the road at LSU. I agree things could get weird, and who the fuck knows what's going to happen, but I like Alabama there. BYU minus the 3.5 at Utah. BYU has been far and away the better team this season, and I don't know, 3.5 seems wrong. That feels like a line that is smaller just because it's a rivalry game and doesn't actually reflect the quality of the teams. So give me BYU minus the 3.5. UCF is catching 2.5 points on the road at Arizona State. I will take them as the outright dog. And then I also want Mizzou at home against the dreadful
I almost picked them.
Oklahoma
but then you
Sooners.
did and yelled at me. So I chose not to pick them.
They're catching 2.5 points. I will take Mizzou outright. I don't care about their quarterback situation because it has to be better than the Oklahoma quarterback situation based on everything I've seen from the Sooners so far this season. Jimmy Carter is 5-5 at 500 after 10 weeks of picks. And for the first time since week 8, we get a voicemail from the president down there in Great Plains, where we will go to now.
Hello to my dear friends at Cast Iron Balls, and also to Ig. Long time no talk, my dear friends. I trust that Halloween and Election Day treated you marvelously. Jason, my good-for-nothing grandson, tells me that Donald Trump is going to be the president again. I suspect because he's trying to kill me. And not because the American people actually voted that way, which I simply refuse to believe. Oh, and don't tell my old friend Joe, but I'm secretly kind of glad that he's only getting the one term and passing things off to Kamala. You've got to go back to Andrew Johnson to find a Democratic president who spent less time in office than me besides Kennedy. Of course, but that's a whole other bushel of peaches. Oklahoma State coach Mike Gundy said earlier this week that the fans complaining about his team being 0-6 in the Big 12 are failures in their own lives. He also said that, and I quote, "Unfortunately, and like most people, a weekend as soon as things start to not go as good as what they thought, they fall apart and they panic." This is, of course, the same man who once so admirably demanded that the media come after him, and not his players, because he's a man. He's 40. It's funny to this old peanut farmer what leadership looks like these days from certain men. It used to be that a leader knew that the buck stopped with him, and a man's character could be measured by how willing he was to be accountable for the failures that happened on his watch, whether he was personally responsible or not. Like that rat fuck Donald Trump. So many so-called leaders these days cannot fail in their own minds. They can only be failed by those around them. Maybe that's a product of giving certain men millions and millions of dollars, completely out of proportion with the actual work that they're doing. Sure, they may be generating revenue, so they're worth what they're being paid. But what does that do to the soul of a man? To be made generationally wealthy without ever really having to do a hard day's work, to dig in the dirt with the hot sun on your back. You might eventually start to believe that you really are better than somebody else, with all that power and money. And the next thing you know, you're telling the media that the hard-working people who make your salary possible are losers and failures. To which I say, Mike, where are we in society today? Come after me. I'm a man, I'm 100.
Are you kidding me? Where are we at in society today? Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
And if you're throwing the very people who support you most need under the bus, calling them failures, telling them it's their fault you keep losing to the same orange idiot, you're overdue for a good long look in the mirror. Oklahoma State is traveling to TCU this Saturday and catching 10.5 points. Normally, I'd love to bet against a man like Gundy, who has just displayed such low character. However, my long life, I have learned that the most red-assed individuals very often find a way to win when you least expect them to. And Mike Gundy is one of the single most red-assed people in a profession of extremely red-assed men. So put your money on the Cowboys with all those points, and thank me on Sunday morning, before you head to church to thank the Lord for another glorious week on His glorious creation, of course. As always, enjoy the games with good food and drink, and most importantly, good company. May God bless this great nation and this great podcast. Until next week, this is Jimmy from Plains for Cast Iron Balls.
Sounds like Jimmy's in pretty good spirits down there down there in Plains,
Yeah.
despite this week's events.
Because he thinks it's not real.
Did you catch Coach Gundy's comments earlier
I
this
did
week?
not actually. There have been.
Man.
He's not the only one. There's been a few coaches who have thrown their players under the bus. I mean, wasn't it the Auburn coach?
It's not his players, it's the fans.
Yeah, it was Hugh Freeze was blaming the players. Mike Gundy was mad at the message board posters this week. Which
They were
that's how
mad.
you know things are going really well.
And he said very calmly, like, well,
I'm just gonna
people
play.
who are complaining
I'm just gonna play the clip here.
are losers. He says it so calmly.
What's his face? Billy Napier, who's getting a vote of confidence. He said something similar about Florida fans, like they're like basement dwellers, even though there aren't basements in that part of Florida.
It's a good point. No basements in
Yeah.
Florida. And Kirby was yelling at the fans earlier this year too.
Yeah.
Here's Gundy on his weekly call-in press conference.
This place has had tremendous success for 18 and a half years or 19. I can't do the math real good, and so unfortunately in life, most people are weak. And as soon as things start to not go as good as what they thought, they fall apart and they panic. And then they want to point the finger and blame other people. That you see it happen in everyday life. People do it all the time. That's why I refuse to watch the TV and watch the news, because I get tired of people complaining and about this and that versus just doing something about it and trying to figure out a way to make it better. Well, that's what happens in college athletics. And as Jenny said, she's exactly right. It's just on the bigger stage where people can voice their opinion. And in most cases, the people that are negative and voicing their opinion are the same ones that can't pay their own bills. They're not taking care of themselves. They're not taking care of their own family. They're not taking care of their own job, but they have an obligation to speak out and complain about others because it makes them feel better. But then in the end, when they go to bed at night, they're the same failure that they were before they said anything negative about anybody else.
Holy shit.
So
I listened to that on the way to work today,
Wow.
and the whole drive, I was like, "Oh, what? Oh, oh my!"
That is that's a lot of shitting on his own fans. Although I got to be honest,
It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. It just keeps going. You know?
The worse that your life is, I mean, it makes sense. You're not going to be in a very pleasant state of mind, right? So you're more likely to lash out. So he makes sense in that regard. But just like, take the lumps, buddy.
Unfortunately, these people are
Yeah.
losers. It happens. It's what life is like, where the people who are upset
weak.
are failures.
Imagine being Mike Gundy. You're getting paid like $8 million a year to coach college football, in part because of a dead oil man benefactor who loved the shit out of you for inexplicable reasons, old T. Boone. But who he's talking about are the people who spend an inordinate amount of their salary, of their net worth every year on this college football program, whether it's going to games or sending money in as boosters. It's not all T. Boone Pickens oil money out there, you fucking dummy.
Right.
It's the people who are making $65,000 a year who are also spending $5 or $7 grand a year to come see your fucking football team, right? Like, what are you doing, you piece of
and
shit?
you have all this money, you can't tolerate a little criticism. It's weird how many times people in sports do this. I remember LeBron, he lost like in the NBA Finals like a long time ago, and he said something along the lines of like, well, I'm going to wake up tomorrow, I'll still be a millionaire, and I'm going to wake up like working some 9-to-5 job or something. Like, it's like, oh, buddy, take it easy. They just shat on you because you lost some basketball game. It's not the end of the world, but like it gets under their skin and they react in this way. And I don't know why that happens. Like, just take your lumps.
Because they're losers.
You've been listening to Cast Iron Balls, a podcast about sports with Bob and Abe and Lori, too. Check us out on Substack, brainiron.substack.com for more from us, including what will no doubt be an absolutely interminable conversation about this week's political events on Tuesday morning in your inbox. If you just go and subscribe to the newsletter at brainiron.substack.com. Also, the opening and closing themes of our show were composed by Mark Gillig. Check him out at tetramermusic.com, Tetramer music.com for more from Mark and his band of lovely rock and roll weirdos. Abe, did you have anything else you wanted to add to our conversation tonight as it relates to the world of sport?
Yeah, I was just reading about Joel Embiid, who plays for the 76ers in the NBA. He's been...
does he play for the 76ers, or is he just contractually obligated to be paid by the 76ers?
A little bit of both. But he's not currently playing, but he is paid to play. He's been suspended for 3 games. He pushed a member of the media. I didn't see any video of it, but other reporters were there, and he's been suspended for that.
What was the altercation about?
So there is this writer for the Inquirer who wrote a disparaging article about him, mostly fair, like basically saying...
Oh, I bet that reporter's fucking loser who can't pay their bills.
So basically the thrust of the argument was that this guy gets paid way too much money for not playing enough games. Like he's always injured.
For playing every fucking third night and like vowing to take off back-to-backs forever.
Right. So like Embiid was fine with that. Like criticize my ability to play, but don't involve my family, right? And the article I can't find because they rewrote it. And Bob, I want you to just kind of like, I'm going to send this here. Just tell me if this is a fair opening, because there are 2 paragraphs that had to be revised because he opened with a family tragedy.
Joel Embiid consistently points to the birth of his son, Arthur, as the major inflection point in his basketball career. He often says that he wants to be great, to leave a legacy for the boy named after his little brother, who tragically died in an automobile accident when Embiid was in his first year as a 76er. Well, in order to be great at your job, you first have to show up for work. Embiid has been great at just the opposite.
Ouch.
Now in his 11th season, he consistently has been in poor condition. This poor conditioning apparently seems to have delayed his debut this season. Embiid won't play in Wednesday's opener or the next 2 games. This is the revised article?
This was the original. I couldn't find the article because they scrubbed it. The revised one removed entirely that first paragraph about his dead kid brother and his new kid who he named after.
It's just a bad segue, right? Like you don't want to include those 2 sentiments back to back, right? That's what you don't want to do is link the 2 things.
He said on X, I don't have the actual post, but it said when he apologized and explaining why they had to revise it, he said, "I rewrote the lead to my column and replaced the picture. I can see why so many people were upset about it. Sorry about that." And he just kind of
that is what it is an insurmountable lead in the Abe's parlance. Like it's once you put that out there, there's no coming back from that fucking lead. It doesn't matter. I mean, especially if you then go on to say, if you want to honor the legacy of your dead little brother, you should probably show up to work every once in a while, you piece of shit.
I don't know the Marcus Hayes or whatever the guy's name is, but he strikes me as like a Jason Whitlock type, just like just one of these people that needles players for whatever reason.
You remember fucking Around the Horn?
Yeah.
Like that feels like one of those Around the Horn segments that gets everybody groaning at you, and you get muted, and reality is throwing shit at you from across the studio.
Yeah, you're losing all the points. Yeah.
That's good stuff. Kudos to that guy. I like him. I will follow him on Twitter. Not worried about access journalism is that guy. That's for goddamn sure. Also, Joel Embiid should probably not be doing violences upon him as a response to it, certainly.
Right.
I don't think I have anything else from the world of sport either. I did have one tweet that I wanted to mention here. This is a political tweet, and I apologize for that. But this is a tweet from a woman named Rachel Bittakofer, who very careful listeners of the show will remember me complaining about Rachel Bittakofer in the past. She's a political scientist who got her PhD from the University of Georgia, has since moved out of academia and is instead just some sort of like a liberal fundraiser and activist now. She posted this earlier today. Best case scenario, they kill the filibuster and use that to pass a national abortion ban, loyalty tests for all public employees, expand the court to give it another 10 conservatives, yada, yada. That's the best case scenario. Worst case, they invoke the Insurrection Act and end the entire constitutional order and arrest the opposition. Plan for both at this point, and if you can afford to flee a red state, do it now. Early birds will get the worm. That
a little much, I think.
That was her tweet at 3:30 this afternoon. This was not done in the heat of the moment on Tuesday night. This was instead something done earlier today. People are fucking losing their minds in this in the aftermath.
Just
of this
let
election.
it breathe. Don't say anything. Process it.
I can assure you, Rachel, that even your best case scenario is not what is going to come to pass. They will not, in fact, kill the filibuster. They will not pass a national abortion ban. There will not be loyalty tests. Well, maybe there will be something like a loyalty test for public employees. I don't know what form that will, what shape that will take exactly. But they're not going to also expand the court and just put 10 more conservatives on it. You know why they won't do that? Because they don't fucking have to.
Yeah.
There's no need. They've already got a supermajority on the court for the next fucking generation. It doesn't fucking matter. And probably the wise Latino woman on the court is going to fucking kick it during this administration.
You think she can survive 4 years?
She's in her 70s, and she'll
probably be fine.
She's got diabetes.
Yeah, she does have diabetes, yeah.
She's not a healthy lady. And Clarence Thomas might retire also.
He probably should, right? Yeah.
About that time for him, right?
Yeah.
Because he certainly must be aware, from a political perspective, the Republicans, as great as this victory was for them, I don't think they're winning in 28.
Also, they got to worry about there's usually like a blowback in the midterm. So like they have this window to, you never know how the Senate's going to go in 26. So get the confirmation stuff done by then.
Yeah. Although I don't know that Schumer's got the McConnell-sized cojones to do what Mitch did.
Oh, and yeah.
But yeah, I think mostly things are going to be, and other things are going to be fine, but they're not going to be that.
Right. Somewhere in the middle. So it's not as bad, not as good. By the way, speaking of sports and politics, Pat Summerall's kid is going to be the new chief of staff.
Susan Wiles is Pat Summerall's daughter?
Yeah. Yep.
No fucking way. I didn't know that.
Way. Yeah.
Pat Summerall is like a personal childhood hero of mine. I didn't know that his daughter was a fucking maggot.
Yeah, her name is Susan Summerall Wiles. The Summerall.
Pat Summerall was the main football announcer of our youths.
Yeah. Him and Madden for a while.
John Madden.
Yeah.
He was a bit of a. Was he the drunk one or was he not the drunk?
Summerall? I didn't know that he was
thought he had
drunk.
like alcohol.
You know who was the drunk one last night? Was that Florida guy? He was the drunk one.
Oh yeah, fucking Rick Scott was being interviewed by Jake Tapper last night, and
drunk.
He definitely drank his dinner because it was not yet 9:00 and he was slurring everything. It was quite amusing. To
really?
watch.
Was he like a Stetson Bennett kind of thing after the championship? Like when he looked a little drunk? Remember what?
Similar to that. Yeah. Anyway, the sports will be a pleasant reprieve from all of that stuff this weekend, I'm sure.
Yes.
Unless the dogs lose, in which case I'll be fucking miserable. And then
don't be miserable.
I'll pour myself into my Twitter feed, my awful political news Twitter feed as a reprieve from the awful sports.
Lance Kiffin's going to be obnoxious if he wins.
He's the worst.
He's going to be obnoxious whether he wins or loses. It will just be more personally obnoxious to me if he wins. Wasn't he bitching about like the kickoff
night
time?
Game.
He wanted a night game instead of an afternoon game.
Right,
they give the night game to LSU and Alabama because we all know that they're everybody's favorite.
Yes, that's a much better night game.
And
is LSU Alabama at Baton
they
Rouge.
lost to LSU, we lost to Alabama. Maybe if both of us had won those games, this would be a different way.
Exactly.
Abe, you got anything else for us tonight?
Nope.
Well, I guess that's all we've got for you tonight then, and we will talk to you next time.
Later.
John Mulaney's thing. We all know he's a horse in a hospital, right? Like,
That's right.
It's not even short-term memory. It's like we're going to pretend like the horse belongs in the hospital until the horse starts doing crazy horse shit again.
Yeah.
But he's inevitably going to do the crazy horse shit because it is his nature. He cannot be in the world unless he is having this antagonistic and awful relationship with the media at large. Like, yeah, can he do silly things that now the media is going to freak out against? Sure, absolutely. But mostly he knows the surest path to what he needs and wants is to be a crazy asshole in the most crazy asshole sort of way. So, like, that's what's coming. And why you think it could be possibly anything else, I don't know why the self-delusion. Like, it just... And it's self-delusion from people who I can usually rely on to give me an accurate read of the world is what's most insane about it, right? And it's like because they've been so poisoned by their hatred for the mainstream media, which is often justified, right? Like often their disdain for the media is correct in its analysis, but the way that allows them to imagine the best possible case scenario for someone who they themselves don't align with otherwise it's brain breaking to me.
Yeah.
It's going to be real bad.
It'll be something.
It'll be something.
bad version. Of
It'll
something.
be. I just like the range of possibilities. I wish I had like the New York Times should have a needle for the second term. Like which way it's gonna go. Like, oh shit, it's 85% chance of
Bad.
catastrophe.
You don't need a needle. It's just bad.
Yeah.
It is amusing to me, though, to watch Kamala Harris give a 7-minute speech and Joe Biden give a 12-minute speech about the peaceful transfer of power and how important all of that is, when it was 5 minutes ago that they were saying this man is a fascist who's going to end our country. Like, if you believed that at all, the only appropriate response would be to use every possible lever of power in your arsenal to prevent him from becoming the president, right? Like, otherwise you're just a fucking hypocrite who doesn't believe anything that they say.
Right. They're just trying to persuade the voters with that language.
Yes, that is...
Didn't mean it literally.
No, certainly not. And why mean anything in public? Why bother? Why,
And also, you have like literally nothing to hang your hat on, because like it was such a decisive kind of like just the bottom fell out. 10 million voters just sat at home. Just a disaster.
The proceeding was created with 100% human content.